Hi everybody, I'm Alexis Kofod and I own Soul Food Farm with my husband Eric. And Soul Food Farm is located here on Pleasance Valley Road in Vacaville, California. We bought the farm 20 years ago and we've been creating it ever since with new plants, animals, and new products that we're developing. Right now I'm standing in the middle of the lavender field, and this is a partnership with Rose, who owns Morning Sun Herb Farm, and we collaborate on the lavender field together. So we make lavender essential oil, we sell dried and fresh flowers, we do workshops, and it's just been a friendship we've been bringing together for the last few years to create something beautiful and something that we can share with the public, and also a chance for two farmers to work together. So Soul Food Farm has a whole list of products that we've developed over the last 20 years. We produce olive oil from an orchard we planted with our family over 20 years ago. We have farm fresh eggs that we sell. We produce yarn from our East Frisian sheep. And we also have a CSA that we've been developing over the last 2 months, where we collaborate with farmers from all over the region and help them sell their products. And that's something that you can see online at soulfoodfarmcsa.com. So even though we're a small family farm, we have a lot of things going on here. And like most farmers, we're working round the clock to make sure that we can juggle all the projects and chores that need to be done every day. But as soon as this 2020 year kind of wraps itself up, we hope by next spring we'll be able to open up to the public again and invite you back to the farm to see all that we've been working on. Good morning. I'm Alexis Kofod and I own Soul Food Farm with my husband Eric. We're in the olive orchard, which is something that we planted I think more than 20 years ago with our family. And when I say family, I mean my sister, my nephew, niece. They were just little then. My parents were here. Some friends came. We knew nothing about farming back then. We had just moved onto the property from where we had lived in Vallejo, so we were totally green. None of my family was into farming, but we decided we were going to plant an olive orchard. So when my sister came up with the idea, she's like, let's plant 10 trees. I'm like, why 10 trees? Well, we can plant 300 trees. So that's what we did. And we hired a crew that I had met out in the Napa Valley where I was working for a winery that laid out vineyards. And I convinced them to come out here and use the same technology to lay out an olive orchard. So that's what we did. And my dad was here with us then. He was 80 at the time, and or maybe late 70s. And he was out here digging holes with my husband. My sister and I were sorting out the tree. They were just little whips, and whips are just sort of like a branch with some little leaves on it, and those are called whips. That's the best way I can describe it to you. So when we planted these trees, they actually were like whips would be something like this, a very thin rooted branch. So they were very small. And we had our kids out here and they were furious with us because it was hot. We were making them work and they were like 9 and they were like pissed. So it was definitely a family affair. We had a big lunch out here afterwards. Friends came by. And if some of you have been following the virtual farm day videos, you may have heard us talk about Brazelton Ranch, or maybe you know of Brazelton Ranch. Well, that particular day, 20 plus years ago, Bruce Brazelton was driving down Pleasance Valley Road and he saw me standing there tangled up in irrigation line and all of us trying to figure out how to plant 200, 300 trees, and he pulled over and he said, I've driven up and down the road a few times and I feel so bad for you guys. You don't know what you're doing. So that's how I met Bruce Brazelton, and he came out and he showed us how to lay out irrigation line. I mean, now I do things like that, lay out irrigation line, plant trees without batting an eye. I mean, I have all the pieces. I know how to lay out a field, but that day really it was just a total mystery to us, and he was such a good guy to come and help us, even though he didn't even know us, so he spent the whole day with us. So if you look around you, now you see 20 plus old olive trees in an olive orchard that were planted by, very silly city folk, and The varieties are Frantoio, Licino, Pendolino, and there's a hybrid variety my sister found called Minerva. I should have probably looked up what the hybrid consists of, but I didn't. So those are the varieties we have here. And we had to nurture these whips into trees for 7 years before we got our first harvest. And so it's definitely been a commitment and a labor of love. But one thing about olive trees, and the reason why we planted them, was because it was that commitment. Olive trees can live for thousands of years, or at least more than 1,000 years. We know that there is one at least 1,000 years old in the Middle East. So they could also be dry farmed. So 20 years ago, we already had this idea that water issues were going to become a problem in the future, and we wanted to nurture this field into production, but transition it into dry farming as soon as we could. So we've trained this field to be a dry farmed olive orchard. We do not irrigate it. So we did our first harvest after about 7 years. We produce olive oil every season since. And while we think of harvest as a summer word and a summer crop idea, actually olives are harvested in the fall or early winter, so end of October, beginning of November, and which is really nice for a small farm like ours, that we have summer crops to harvest, fall crops to harvest, and then lemons in December and January to harvest. So that gives us something to look forward to all year long. So what we do when we harvest our olive field is we hire a crew, for one, so at least 30 people are hired on. We open up the farm those 2 or 3 days to volunteers, so family and friends come and they have a great time helping us harvest the trees. And it takes everyone. So we start about 6, 7 in the morning, and we just go full on until 5 o'clock, filling up big, you may have seen big grape bins. We use grape bins, and we fill those up, and then we load them on a truck. Eric and I drive them to an olive mill to be pressed. So I'm not going to mention a specific olive mill because actually we've tried several, and we've had to make some changes over the years, but we're still looking for that perfect fit for an olive mill that can handle kind of a small family production olive oil. And every year we get about 250 average, 270 gallons. We hand bottle and label it, and we sell it to independent grocery stores, and we also sell it on our CSA, and we also sell the olive oil directly from our farm stand. So it's very hands-on-y, nothing fancy, nothing special, but the oil itself is what's so important. It's good for you, it tastes delicious, it's a California product, and it's just from this field, so we're not adding other olive oils from different farms or different regions into our bottle. It's when you're eating Soul Food Farm olive oil, it's from these trees, and we think that makes all the difference for taste and knowing what your region is all about when it comes to food production. So would you like to come and take a look and see what we do here? So the nice thing about olive trees is when they grow up, they look so picturesque. So I can often pretend I'm like walking through Tuscany, or, I'm in another world when I walk through these olive groves. And that's an interesting thing too that I learned. It's not an olive orchard, which I say that all the time because it's a habit. It's actually an olive grove. So, and I think that the differentiation is because olive trees stay evergreen all year long. They don't lose their leaves. So, but if you walk this way, you can kind of get a sense of what the grove looks like. Another added perk about the olive trees too is that so many birds build nests in these trees. So when we're harvesting the olives in November, of course, the season's over for hatching eggs, but we find so many nests. Maybe last year, I think we may have found like 5 or 6 different nests that were definitely 6 different kinds of birds. So they're all making their little homes in here.
How do you pull the grapes off, or the olives, sorry?
Oh, that's such a great question. So harvesting. Yeah, it's such an interesting thing about harvesting because everybody does it just a little bit different. So we don't use any mechanized harvesters on this orchard or grove. See, there I go again. It's because one of the reasons why is I never trained the trees to have a single trunk and be able to hook on with the machine and shake the tree. Because I didn't know anything about growing olive trees, I had to learn also how to prune, and I made a million mistakes pruning over the years, and thank God olive trees are so forgiving. But so there's some trees that have single trunks and then splay out high up, and then other trees splay out with their branches really low. So we hand pick every olive on this orchard. And actually, I'm glad that it turned out that way because the fruit bruises less when you hand pick it as opposed to mechanized picking. But also, there's something magical about harvest dates when people are up in the trees on ladders and you hear people talking and singing and laughing. And you don't see them, you just hear their voices wafting through the olive trees. And that's what Eric and I really wanted, and my sister, my dad, and mom. We wanted that feeling of unity and community, and picking the olives, slowing down and having to do it by hand really was what we were after. And all these years later, it's a great sort of manifestation of an idea and a dream. So yes, it's more work, but I think the fruit, when we take it to the mill, is in better condition. And I think that it's building community when we're harvesting. So that's why we pick all the olives by hand. And what we typically will do on a harvest day, if you can imagine, so we would have enormous black shade cloth rolled from probably where we're standing to the end of this row in double layers surrounding all the trees. And there's probably 10 ladders up on these trees. There's probably 30 to 40 people standing below and picking low fruit, and people up in the ladders picking high fruit. There's bins spread out, and we just go for it. So that's why it takes we have to hire a crew, because friends would never get the job done. So we have to have both. But the rest of the year, the field's just like this. It's just a quiet space. The fruit's growing. Right now, if we come over here, maybe I can find some. This year for us is going to be a small harvest. I can't even find any berries on this tree, actually. I know there's, let's see if we can find any here. Nope. Oh, here we go. So here are some berries. This is what baby olives look like. I don't know if you can see it. This is what baby olives look like. So last year we had probably one of the biggest crops we've ever had. And this year we have a very, very small crop. And we'll have to make some kind of assessment in September, early October, if we're even going to harvest. We might, if it's too small to take to the mill, we might just open it up to people to pick for their own use. But that's part of the business of milling, is that you have to come with a certain tonnage. So, I mean, there is a minimum requirement to use a mill. So if we can't meet it, we can't go. Oh, I was talking to you earlier about bird's nests. Here's one. This one's made with with grass and mud. I don't know what kind of bird would have nested in it, but there you go. We find these all over. I know, isn't it sweet?
That's great.
I know. Yeah, it's totally sweet.
Why is this year going to be such a low crop?
Well, there's two reasons we're probably going to have a low crop. One is that trees alternate between high yield years and low yield years, but also I came in here and I pruned really heavily. There were about 4 or 5 years where from, let's see, 2013, 14, 15, 16, yeah, probably 2013 to 2017 where I didn't do much pruning. I was taking care of my dad and I couldn't get out here. And so for the last 2 years, I've been breaking the orchard or the grove into sections and pruning the trees back. And so I did probably 100 trees this year, and I pruned them super heavy. So that's just going to reduce production for the year. That's okay. The trees needed it. They need to be brought down. They were getting too high. They needed to be, it's hard to tell right now, but they needed to be opened up. And since I do the pruning, I can only do so many trees a season. But yeah, there you go. Life on in an olive orchard. There you are. Grove. Grove! I'll always say orchard. It's just my habit. Anyway, it sounds better. Yeah, thank you for visiting us. And if you're looking to buy our olive oil and you want to try Soul Food Farm olive oil, you can email us at soulfoodfarm@gmail.com, or you can join our CSA, which is soulfoodfarmcsa.com. And it's not just my farm products on the CSA, but lots of farmers in the region and small business owners and food producers. We're sort of a collective of farmers who are building this CSA together. So you can find all sorts of farm food on there. Thank you for taking a walk in the grove with me. Bye.